one of the simplest things when you interview would be to get feedback, right? You think, how hard is that? I had an interview, I had 2 interviews, 3 interviews, 10 interviews over the 6 months. You think the least the company could do is give a little feedback, a little constructive criticism. It doesn't happen anymore. When I first started recruiting about 25 years ago, feedback was standard. You go in an interview, the HR person, the talent acquisition, although they didn't call it talent acquisition back then, the hiring manager would get in touch with you, give feedback, give ideas, give suggestions to help the candidate. It makes sense, because why are you going to hurt the candidate? The more information you could relate to the job seeker, the better they have to succeed. And it's not kind of like gaming the system. It would just be, hey, when you meet with Joe, this is what he's going to ask. When you met with Jane, hey, here's what she thought of you. When you go to meet Philip, hey, make sure you say X, Y, and Z, because that's what he wants to hear. And so on. So throughout the whole process, there's a back and forth that'll help you go through it. Fast forward till now, what happens? Technology has taken over everything. Plus, I think you'd agree, and this is not pleasant, but as a society, we become a little less civil, a little bit more rude, a little bit more cold, a little bit more inconsiderate, a little bit more inhumane. And you see that happening within the whole hiring interview process. Think about it. You fill out an application. They're asking you for all this personal information, all this data. We kind of know in the back of our mind they're going to probably sell that data off somewhere. Then they ask you then to take your resume and upload it. Well, they could have done that in the first place. But they don't care. They're making you jump through hoops. But then you could just say, at least I'll hear back from them. But no. You think at least I get a canned email? Maybe. A text? A voicemail? An automated voicemail? These are easy things to do, but they don't happen. And it's infuriating for job seekers. Plus, it doesn't help, because how do you get better in an interview if no one tells you what you're doing wrong or how you can improve? Or maybe you did great, but there's another reason. So let me give you a few of the reasons why you're not getting feedback. One is the technology I mentioned. It's easy now to hide behind technology. And this is everywhere. If you want to get in touch with a company, do you get a live person? Maybe not. If you do, are they based here in the U.S.? Probably not. They're probably in another country and you can't understand them when you speak to them. And I know that sounds politically incorrect, but my job here is to be transparent and not pretend things are, not what they really are. I mean, these are the things. It's a problem. You want to get a hold of somebody, whatever big tech company, try to get a hold of a real person at Facebook or Twitter or Google or Apple. Come on, it's almost impossible. They have chat box. You can type in there and they pretend that there's a human on the other end. We both know there's not a human. Well, come on. You'll stay on hold for 3 hours and then get disconnected. Maybe you'll get someone, maybe you won't. Technology is the same thing within the whole, job search interview process. I'm not the guy who say ATS are evil and they're robots and no, it's just technology that just gets in the way. Not even say get in the way, it's just technology. And it's easy for people at the company to not get back, let things go into their voicemail, get the text, maybe look at it, maybe not, and they can just avoid it. Whereas in the past, you pick up the phone call, they're not going to take a call. That doesn't happen anymore. So this kind of new, rude, inconsiderate, with a layer of technology just makes it like, okay, I don't have, from the company side, I really don't have to get back to them. Why bother? Which also then flows into this. We're a very litigious society. Lawsuits are started for the drop of a hat for anything. We all read about these crazy lawsuits that you're like, what? That's nuts. I can't believe they're suing for whatever. But sometimes, obviously, they're real issues. Companies are concerned, and I can't even fault them that much, that if maybe one of their representatives says something that could be construed as racist, sexist, something against the religion you have, or any other kind of thing. And before you know it, it's a lawsuit, and then maybe even a class action lawsuit. So what happens, it becomes easier not to say anything. Because if you say something and you engage with somebody, you know how conversations go. You start going back and forth, and then you ask more probing, and before you know it, the other person says something like, oh, and you really get to the truth. Or sometimes people just get a little heated and they say things they don't mean. So for the company, if you think about it, if you're a lawyer, you're the general counsel of one of these companies, you'd probably advise everybody, don't say anything, because if you say anything, you could get yourself in trouble. And if you write something to them, let's have it looked at 5 times over so that doesn't get you in trouble. Let's have a check and go through all these layers to make sure there's not anything inappropriate said. So what happens is it's easier just not to say anything and hope it goes away. Particularly, that becomes the accepted norm. So it's as if well, everybody's doing it, so I'm going to do it too. So you have the technology you could hide behind, plus now you have this litigation risk. So that at the company, you don't want to say anything because you don't want to get yourself in trouble. You don't be called into the HR office and say, hey, you've been accused of, and fill in the discrimination or the prejudice. You don't want to put yourself in that spot. You'll be a pariah and not get a job again. So it's easy not to say anything. Another thing what happens too is oftentimes in big bureaucracies, the people who are on the ground, who you're interacting with in terms of setting up interviews, being the gatekeeper, there's such a bureaucratic ladder going up the chain of command. And a lot of times you have no idea what's happening. If you have no idea what's happening, you don't want to give misinformation, so you don't say anything. Would it be better if you were honest and said that? Absolutely, because if people could understand that, hey, thanks for sharing with me. I understand that your manager has to look at it, your manager's manager has to look at it, the people in some other departments where this job there's going to be a connection, has to look at it. So since you don't have that information, you can't give it, but at least thank you for letting me know. Thanks for telling me where I stand. But that really doesn't happen. They just kind of wait. Also, to be fair, most people, I would say, don't like giving bad news. How would you feel if your job was, you're a hiring person in whatever capacity, you get 100 resumes, and to go and tell 99, or let's be 90 of them, you don't have the right background for this, sorry. And then the interview process goes, and you have to tell 4 or 5 more people, no, you don't get the job. That's a lot of contacting people. Multiply that by all the other jobs you're working on. And to say sorry, no to all these people, it's gonna take up all your time, and you're not gonna be able to do real recruiting and hiring. Plus also, it's uncomfortable. It's awkward. Because if you say to somebody, hey Jack, thanks, no, we're not gonna move forward with you. Well, I'm not just going to say, okay. I'm going to say, well, can you give me some more reasons? And try to get it out. And then they're going to have to say, well, you did this wrong, that wrong, you didn't do this. It just comes, it's uncomfortable. And a lot of people aren't trained. And here's another point, too. What happens is this, I think, is that what I've noticed, there's a correlation. As I mentioned, when I first started recruiting, you would get a lot of feedback, a lot of back and forth. But the people who were working in these capacities in HR, talent acquisition, hiring managers, were experts in their field. So they could really give good information. It seems now the correlation is the more technology, the more expensive technology they feel, the less they need experienced people, and you have more junior people fielding things. Now, nothing wrong with junior people. They're brilliant young people. But you can't compare someone with 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 years experience with someone 5, 10, 15, 20, 30 years experience. So that it's hard for them to know really what the requirements of the job. Did you meet it? Did you not meet it? And then it's also uncomfortable if you're 23, 24, 25 and you have to tell a 55-year-old why they're not getting the job. It's just a weird, uncomfortable feeling to it. Now, should it make a difference because of the age? No. But does it? Of course. So it's easier not to say anything. Another reason is this. They already have selected somebody. They like somebody, but they like you too. But they don't want to say anything to you because they're not sure how it's going to play out with that other person. So they're stringing you along, which could be okay if you end up getting the job. But it also would be okay if they were honest and say, hey, Jack, We have someone we really like. They came early to the search. They're far along, a little further than you. It looks really good. I'm not sure if it's going to work out in terms of the dollars. So I want to keep you warm. I want to keep you involved because this might work. Then you're like, oh, all right. You might have a little twinge of like, all right, I'm second best. But you say, hey, I like the job. I want the job. It's more money, more opportunity. I'll take it. That's good. But oftentimes they don't say it. They just think you're going to be waiting around. And I think a large part is because so many people out of work, it's like, meh, what are you going to do? There's not a lot of jobs out there, so you'll wait. And then you wait, and you wait, and you wait. And what happens too with the resume submissions, it's so easy now to send resumes. You go to LinkedIn, you have the easy apply, boop, you hit it, and you just go down. You can send out 50, 100, just like that. Each company has their own internal site, website that has the jobs, send it out there. Or the job aggregators or the niche job sites. So you're on your phone, you can just send it out. So imagine these companies, particularly like a Goldman, a Google, an Apple, a Netflix, a Zoom. Imagine how many resumes they're getting. It just becomes impossible to get back to them all. We've had 65 million people file for unemployment since the pandemic started. Now, I'm not saying every 65 million people are going to send a resume to the same company, but just you could imagine the numbers become staggering. So then it almost becomes, it's literally impossible for some of these companies to get back one-on-one to these people. And because it's so easy to send resumes, come on, we're all guilty of doing this. What happens is that you take a shot. They're asking for 20 ingredients. You have 3 of them, but you're like, I love this company. I pay a lot of money. Let me give it a shot. What's to lose? Let me just send it. Maybe they'll pick me up. Multiply that by so many people, then the ones who have 10 out of 10, 12 out of 10, 20 out of 10, the time they get to them, they're exhausted from looking through all these resumes. So even if they want to get back to them, it's just too much data. So this is what's happening. You have technology. You have the rise of rudeness, ghosting, incivility. You have the litigation risk where everyone's afraid to say something because they'll get in trouble. You have this just human thing where you just don't want to tell somebody no. You have the behind the scenes where it's so bureaucratic, you're not sure what's going on, so you don't want to say anything. You have an overflow of resumes that it's not a human. You're not a human anymore. You're a piece of paper, and you've seen so many of them day in, day out. It's just impossible to get back. And that's what we're dealing with. So when the big thing I feel for job seekers is that as you're going through it, you're realizing, hey, is it me? Why am I not getting back? The job looked great. And here's another thing. A lot of these job postings aren't real. When you look at them, they seem real, they seem great, but there's a lot of reasons for it. They may have contracts with different job boards, and they pay for it, so they just leave it up. They know they have people, but they put the job out there. Let's see if there's someone better. They have people, but they have to meet certain employment standards to ensure that make sure they're meeting a bunch of people with different who are diverse, different diversity and inclusion requirements. So they're putting out to see what they can get. They're just stockpiling resumes for the future. They're figuring, hey, there's so many people looking for a job now. Let's just collect them. Let's see them all. So when you're looking at these jobs, they're not real. But then when you send your resume to them and you don't get feedback for all the other reasons, you want to be like, what's going on? What do I do? So here's what you do. First thing is, now that I kind of gave you the backstory, and I bet you everybody who's watching this is saying, yep, I kind of knew that. Yep, thanks. At least you're confirming what I knew, so I don't feel like I was crazy thinking these things. So this is what's happening. By knowing it's happening, at least you could take comfort in the fact that you're not the only one. You're not getting dinged. There's no one has an axe to grind with you. You're not being blackballed from the industry you're in. You're dealing with these kind of really entrenched stuff that's going on with these companies. Now, how to go about it? It's rough. If we had this If I was doing this 5 years ago, 6 years ago, I'd say you pick up the phone, you call that HR person, you call that talent acquisition person. If they don't get back to you, you call their manager, you call the person who you interviewed with, you call that person's manager. But we're not in that world anymore. People don't like picking up the phone. There's so many robocallers, they just disregard it. And it might even seem a little aggressive now, where phone usage used to be that was the thing to communicate. And that's another reason why we lose communication, because we lost the art of picking up the phone and having a one-on-one conversation. A hack could be this. Not easy to pull off, but if you could find people at the company you know, the same way I've talked about in other segments, that if you could find people to give you a lead to get your resume in front of the right people to get the job, the same thing to get an insider to maybe find out what happened. If you know a person who's involved with the process, ask them, hey, I really like this job. I went on 5 interviews over 5 months. I like it. I love it. Can you do me a favor? Just find out what happened. Why am I not hearing anything back? No one said no to me, but they didn't say yes. All the interviews went well. Can you find out? And maybe that person could then get some ideas and come back to you. Good or bad, at least they'll get back to you. I would also not give up getting in touch with people. I would do it this way. Set a time limit where you feel, all right, I invested 3 interviews, 4 interviews, 3 months, 4 months. I deserve to get some feedback, some constructive criticism, some acknowledgement, something. And you become the point where the odds are, because the longer this takes, the odds start going against you, because there's just more and more people that could be interviewed. There are more and more people who can maybe have better skills than you. So time is your enemy. Time is your enemy. So what I would suggest is this. Put a line in the sand where you say, okay, after this period of time, that's it. I'm going to go. I'm going to do what as I mentioned before, maybe try calling them up, calling the manager that you met with, calling the manager's manager, calling the HR, calling the person who the hiring manager reports into, because now you have nothing to lose. You have nothing to lose. So if anything, it's a little bit of you're getting a little satisfaction back to say, hey, you know what? You blew me off. That was freaking rude. And I'm going to let it know that you're rude and that's not right to do. And if enough people would do that, I think managers would wake up. And I would contend a lot of senior level people don't know what's happening, because they'll go and speak to their staff. How's it going? Oh, yeah, it's going great, yeah. But they're not telling them all this stuff. So if it gets to the attention of more senior people, they're going to say, wait a minute, that's terrible for our brand. We're a Fortune 500 company, and this is how we're treating people? That's awful. That's embarrassing. And they'll kind of start facilitating changes. So I would find first a subtle way to get someone to kind of do it. Now it could backfire, because then let's say you're really in the running, they say, why are you speaking to Fred, or in the like, what do you're supposed to contact me, and it can be awkward. But then you could always answer, well, to be fair, I did send you 100 emails and 10 texts and left 20 messages you to get back. You could say that, or you could say, well, I tried to contact you, so I know Fred very well, and Fred had just reached out to me, and we spoke and said, oh yeah, I'll be glad to check in, and see what's going on. You could check in with the hiring manager, him or herself, and just be straight up, saying, hey, I really enjoyed meeting with you. I enjoyed the interview. I would love to work there. I haven't heard anything. Can you let me know? And then it puts them in an awkward spot, because they could be, wow, I thought someone may have told you we moved in a different direction, or I did like you. Why are you not getting back? So you force the issue. You can even go over that manager. I know this sounds really cold. It sounds harsh. It sounds like, when you saw those rash of Karen videos or Kyle videos, whatever, where I want to speak to your manager. But you don't have to go with that attitude. I'm not suggesting that at all, just the opposite. I'm suggesting an attitude of polite. Kill them with politeness. Politeness, but persistency. You don't want to be, I want to speak to your manager. How dare you? You didn't get back to me. Oh, I'm mad. How dare you? You don't want to be, and I'm being like, you see those videos where people just go crazy. You don't want to be like that. But you just want to stand up for yourself. And get in touch, but polite. Because if you kind of have an attitude, and you rightly you should, but this is the real world. it would be natural to say, hey, what the F? What's going on? You can't do that. You don't want to call out people. You don't want to throw people under the bus. You want to be polite. Hey, hiring manager, I've interviewed, as I'm sure you're aware, on 10 occasions over the course of 6 months. Last I heard is I was the finalist, and they were thinking about putting a package together, and I haven't heard anything now in 2.5 weeks. I really like the job. I liked you. I really think we got along really well. I'd love to work for the company. Can you just give me some feedback? What's happening? Am I still in the running or not? Is there something I could do or should do? And this way you're calling it. Either way, they're going to get back. You put them on the spot. It's going to be yay or nay. Now, a lot of people rather, and this is really interesting. I find this out. This is what's, in a way, good from being a recruiter for so long, because you get these inside stuff. Oftentimes, people rather not directly ask for it because they don't want to be told no. They rather harbor the hope that it will work out. So they'll hold off getting back to the person. And then a day goes by, a week goes by, a month goes by, 2 months goes by. I don't agree with that strategy. Take, in your own mind, feel like, all right, by now I should have known. And I didn't, so I have nothing to lose but to find out. If they say, Jack, thank you, no thank you, we went in another direction, okay, at least you know. And then you say, hey, thank you, I appreciate it. And you don't have to be a jerk about like, oh, now you tell me I have to call you. You just be a gentleman, gentlewoman. Hey, thank you, I appreciate letting me know, because now I can kind of move on. I have other things pending. Even if you don't, you say that to sound cool. So I have other things I'm close with, so I'm glad you mentioned it because I don't want to lose those opportunities. So thanks for sharing it with me. But then also, hey, I really enjoyed the meeting. I enjoyed our conversation. I enjoyed meeting, and you can name the other people. Great company. If anything ever comes up again, keep me in mind. And let's link in together. I think we have a lot in common. And if nothing else, hey, I made a great new connection. So thank you very much. So you're being a sport about it. And then you move on. It would be nice if that didn't have to go that way, right? It would be nice. But what I'm trying to do in this series is just give you here's what's going on. And a lot of it is not pretty. It's not in your favor. But we try to come up with ways to arm you and to have stuff to do to come back and stick up for yourself. And help you fight back against all this. So hopefully this frames it and you kind of understand a little bit better. And I bet you, as I mentioned, this confirms what you're already thinking. And I hope this strategy, it's a little ballsy, it's a little pushy, it's a little aggro. But I think in these times you have to be that way. You can't be passive. You just get run over. You'll get steamrolled. You have to stand up for yourself. You have to be strong. You have to be assertive. So you have to find maybe an insider who's going to hook you up the same way you did to get a job lead and to get your resume in front of the right person. Find someone who can scope out what really happened. And if not, get in touch with all the people you met with until you get an answer. Because if they don't get back to you, think about this. You have nothing really to lose at that point. Because if you try and they don't get back, that's not a company you want to work for. Because that's your first interaction. And they're treating you so rudely, then you know what? Keep trying. Eventually you'll find a place that really appreciates you for you. Thank you for watching.